ਪਿਛਲੇ ਦਿਨੀ ਇੱਕ ਰੋਜ਼ਾ ਕਾਨਫਰੰਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖੂਨ ਦੇ ਕੈਂਸਰ ਬਾਰੇ, ਜੋ ਟੈਸਟ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਖੂਨ ਦੇ ਜਮ੍ਹਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ, ਪੇਟ 'ਚ ਪਾਣੀ ਭਰਨ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਟੈਸਟਿੰਗ ਬਾਰੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਚਰਚਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ। ਦੱਸ ਦਈਏ ਕਿ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਦਿਨੀ ਸਰਕਾਰੀ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਕਾਲਜ ਪਟਿਆਲਾ ਦੇ ਪੈਥੋਲੋਜੀ ਡਿਪਾਰਟਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਸ਼ੁੱਕਰਵਾਰ 10 ਅਪ੍ਰੈਲ 2026 ਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਮੈਡੀਸਨ ਕੌਂਸਲ ਦੀ ਅਗਵਾਈ ਹੇਠ ਹੋਮਾਟੋ ਸਾਈਟੋ ਅਪਡੇਟਸ 2026 ਸਰਲੇਖ ਵਾਲਾ ਇੱਕ ਰੋਜ਼ਾ ਨਿਰੰਤਰ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ CME ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਸਫਲਤਾਪੂਰਵਕ ਆਯੋਜਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ। ਇਸ ਸਮਾਗਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਰਾਜ ਅਤੇ ਆਸ-ਪਾਸ ਦੇ ਖੇਤਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੋਸਟ ਗ੍ਰੈਜੂਏਸ਼ਨ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ, ਫੈਕਲਟੀ ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਪੈਥੋਲੋਜਿਸਟ ਦੀ ਸਰਗਰਮ ਭਾਗੀਦਾਰੀ ਦੇਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੀ। ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਕੌਂਸਲ ਦੁਆਰਾ 3 ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਘੰਟਿਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਮਾਨਤਾ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਸੀ। AMC ਡਾਕਟਰ ਅਵਨੀਸ਼ ਕੁਮਾਰ, ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਰ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਐਂਡ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਐਜੂਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਪੰਜਾਬ, ਡਾਕਟਰ ਰੁਪਿੰਦਰ ਬਖਸ਼ੀ, ਜੁਆਇੰਟ DRME ਪੰਜਾਬ, ਡਾਕਟਰ RPS ਸੀਬੀਆ, ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਰ ਪ੍ਰਿੰਸੀਪਲ ਅਤੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਵਿਸ਼ਾਲ ਚੋਪੜਾ, ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਸੁਪਰੀਡੈਂਟ ਸਰਕਾਰੀ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਕਾਲਜ ਅਤੇ ਰਾਜਿੰਦਰਾ ਹਸਪੀਟਲ ਪਟਿਆਲਾ ਦੀ ਸਤਿਕਾਰਯੋਗ ਸਰਪ੍ਰਸਤੀ ਹੇਠ ਆਯੋਜਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧਕੀ ਚੇਅਰਮੈਨ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਹਰਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ, ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਅਤੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਪੈਥੋਲੋਜੀ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਸਮਾਗਮ ਦੇ ਤਾਲਮੇਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਮਹੱਤਵਪੂਰਨ ਭੂਮਿਕਾ ਨਿਭਾਈ। ਡਾਕਟਰ ਵਿਜੇ ਬੋਦਿਲ ਵੀ PMC ਆਬਜ਼ਰਵਰਸ ਦੇ ਵਜੋਂ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਸਨ। CME ਦੌਰਾਨ ਪੈਥੋਲੋਜੀ ਵਿਭਾਗ ਦੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਫੈਕਲਟੀ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਸੀ। ਵਿਗਿਆਨਕ ਸੈਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰਸਿੱਧ ਸੰਸਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਘੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ, ਡਾਕਟਰ ਰਜਨੀ ਯਾਦਵ, ਡਾਕਟਰ ਜੋਤਿੰਦਰ ਪੂਨੀਆ ਅਤੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨਵੀਨ ਕੱਕੜ ਦੁਆਰਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੁਹਾਰਤ ਦੇ ਖੇਤਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਭਾਸ਼ਣ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਸਨ। ਪੰਜਾਬ, ਹਰਿਆਣਾ ਅਤੇ ਚੰਡੀਗੜ੍ਹ ਤੋਂ ਲਗਭਗ 250 ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਭਾਗੀਦਾਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਅਕਾਦਮਿਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਮੂਲੀਅਤ ਕੀਤੀ। ਇਸ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਪੋਸਟਰ ਪੇਸ਼ਕਾਰੀ ਮੁਕਾਬਲਾ ਵੀ ਆਯੋਜਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੋਸਟ ਗ੍ਰੈਜੂਏਟ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਲਿਆ। CME ਦਾ ਸਮਾਪਨ ਇਨਾਮ ਵੰਡ ਸਮਾਰੋਹ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਇਆ, ਜੋ ਕਿ ਹੀਮਾਟੋਲੋਜੀ ਅਤੇ ਸਾਈਟੋਲੋਜੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਰੱਕੀ ਅਤੇ ਕੇਂਦਰਿਤ ਇੱਕ ਸਫਲਤਾ ਅਕਾਦਮਿਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਸੀ। ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨਵਨੀਤ ਕੌਰ ਨੇ ਪਤਵੰਤਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕੀਤਾ ਅਤੇ ਸਮਾਗਮ ਦੇ ਅੰਤ ਵਿੱਚ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਮਨੋਵੀਰ ਕੌਰ ਨੇ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਦਾ ਮਤਾ ਪਾਸ ਕੀਤਾ। ਪੋਸੂਨਾਮਾ ਚੈਨਲ ਲਈ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਕਾਲਜ ਰਾਜਿੰਦਰਾ ਹਸਪੀਟਲ ਪਟਿਆਲਾ ਤੋਂ।
Thank you, chairpersons, for the kind introduction. So I shall be talking about the ascitic fluid cytology. So that's a very common sample which the cytology laboratory receives. So if we talk about the effusion cytology, so mainly the pleural fluid, then the ascitic fluid and pericardial fluid are the chief 3 samples which most of the people receive. And it is very important to examine in a systematic fashion, so that we shall be seeing that how to do that. So we all know that when excessive accumulation happens in a body cavity, so it's known as a serous effusion. Now whenever it is there, so we know that yes, there is an underlying pathology and it becomes then a diagnostic sample in the practice. Now what all it can actually yield to is that we can pick up the malignancies. And once you know that there is a malignancy, so it helps in the staging of the tumor and the customization of the treatment or the tailoring of the treatment. Now it is very, very important to look at the analytic variables, because if focus is not paid on to that, so the diagnostic yield is going to itself decrease. So that's why these methods of collection and processing, which are highly variable, so the Indian Academy of Cytology that came with these guidelines. So that's available online, and these guidelines are of 3 types. So the points which are essential to follow, then the optimal or the desirable things to do, and the optional things. So if we start with the sample collection, so we know the fluid collection is done by the clinician. So it's done with a needle under LA, and so these are the three chief which are obtained. And then what is the peritoneal washing? So it is something which is intraoperative. So the surgeon and the gynecologist. So when they are operating, so at that time we instill the normal saline and then take out the fluid. So these are the important samples. And then the requisition form. Yeah, it's very, very important. So this is the ideal template, so which is recommended by the academy, that we should have this amount of information, but practically I think most of us, we don't get this amount of information. So it definitely is going to alter the report which is being generated and released. So more amount of information available, more meaningful report will be there. Then how to transport these samples? So they have to be transported fresh as soon as possible in a sterile container. And then improper labeling is dangerous. So this can be rejected upright. And then if the transportation is not available or possible, so like market, and so in Western places they are using. So see, every method has its own advantages and limitations. So once you standardize at your place, so I will say whatever gets standardized, it's good. So we also tried different methods, and the simplest now we use. So just making a sediment, and or otherwise just collecting the material in a Eppendorf and the buffered formalin, and then just letting it clot, and then putting that into a filter paper and the cassette, and it works well. Then now you have got the slides. Now how to report. So that's the international system of the serous fluid cytopathology which is in place. Now why using these systems is important is, I will say, so this reduces the inter-observer variability. So if one person or other person is seeing in the same department, or if the patient is moving across different colleges or the different institutes, then also it becomes important. So there will be less of the variability. Again, the communication between different clinical departments. So like these fluids, so they'll come from many surgical departments, sometimes medicinal departments. So if there is a uniform reporting system, so there is an increased level of communication in between the clinician and pathologist also. So like the first category, non-diagnostic, that means it has not served any purpose, or there is some material on which no opinion is possible. Then second is negative, so that means benign. Then third is atypical, but then it is so less. So that's good for us, because that is a difficult diagnosis, I think. So see, in the negative samples, so we mostly have lymphocytes, polymorphs and meso. But these mesothelial cells, they create problems. Like in this case, so I feel that they are looking atypical. But see, this that way you choose, or maybe you don't require any marker at all sometimes. So that these are the different markers. Again, for lineage also you can see. So mostly adenocarcinoma shed, and sometimes you will have these urothelial, neuroendocrine or squamous. Then after the secondary malignancies, this is one mesothelioma, which is actually quite a challenging task, at least on serous things. So that also then we can choose some markers according to that, because these many markers is difficult to carry out. But I will say, so other than cell block, we can do on smears also. So before cell blocks, we used to prepare additional smears from the fluid, because fluid is kept only. So you have examined the initial set of slide, and you think International Pediatric Pathology Conference, which will be in August at AIIMS New Delhi, and I warmly welcome you all for that.
Thank you, Shagun. That was so serene. Moving forward, I would like to invite Dr. Harpal Singh, HOD Department of Pathology, Government Medical College, Patiala. Sir, please come to dais and to deliver your welcome address. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Rama. Very good morning to all of you for reaching here at Royal City of Patiala. Various distinguished dignitaries on the dais, the Department of Pathology of Government Medical College, Patiala is honored to host this one-day CME on update of 2026 on 10th April. The organizing committee has been actively preparing this scientific meet from the very short period of time, even within less than a month, but after a very long gap of a period, I think that is 14 years. An academic program of teaching of basic diagnostic things connecting with some recent advances in hematology and cytopathology is going to be presented. Experts in these subjects have been invited to deliver their deliberations. I welcome Dr. Raminderpal Singh Sibia, our worthy and dynamic Director Principals, for guiding and cooperating in organizing this CME. I also welcome Dr. Vijay Kumar, PMC member and our senior professor of the department, for helping us to get this 3 hours of the PMC credit hours. In spite of our best efforts, some deficiencies, they are bound to be there. I humbly request you to overlook all the unavoidable lapses. A very warm welcome to the dignitaries, guests, honored guest speakers, delegates, students and juniors to this one-day CMD. Rest, we need your blessings and from the Almighty God to make this event a success. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Sir has worked tirelessly for the past so many days. So thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite our respected dignitaries to share their valuable thoughts. First of all, I would like to invite our worthy Director Principal, sir, Dr. Raminderpal Singh Sibia. Sir, please come to the dais. And sir is also heading medicine department, and sir is a visionary leader, and under his guidance only that Department of Pathology is able to organize this CME. Sir, thank you so much.
At the outset, I'd like to congratulate Team Pathology headed by Dr. Harpal and Dr. Vijay for organizing such great speakers. I think all of us would be enlightened by their knowledge they have come to share over here with their colleagues and the students. And also we people, maybe we also tend to become more complacent, and times we always ring them up ke bhai aapko kya lagta hai ye hame bata do, are we heading for leukemia or something like that. There are small things which we have learned from you people only, like giving a shot of steroid before we send in the PBF would mask the leukemia totally. So over a period of time, only with interaction, we have come to know how to do things in a better manner, to plan things in a better manner, and we are extremely thankful to you all. We also keep organizing hematology sessions. Last year it was Hematocon. It was attended by somewhere around 500 delegates, and we had people from AIMS, PGI and all those big guns from Pune also. That is their Brigadier Sahab, I think he is quite an important person in hematology. So bit by bit we are also trying to learn, but of course we keep on troubling you people to guide us. Now things have become so complicated, so vast, that it is not a matter that a single person would be able to do anything. So it's always a teamwork while treating leukemias or lymphomas. What type of markers do we need to send? What is the meaning of those coming positive? And things like complication like HLH, DIC, so many things, they are now with shared knowledge we are able to diagnose. So I'm really thankful that Dr. Harpal and his colleagues have taken up this difficult task of organizing CME, and I again congratulate all of you, and thank you speakers and chairpersons for coming from such vast areas and enlightening us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, DP sir, for inspiring us and for supporting us. Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite Dr. Vijay Bodal, Member Punjab Medical Council, as well as Professor Department of Pathology, GMC Patiala. So please come forward and share your good wishes and thoughts with us.
Good morning to everybody. First of all, on behalf of Punjab Medical Council and National Medical Commission, I welcome all the delegates, all the faculty member and all the speaker to this CME. So I will, because most of the here are PG student and budding pathologist, I will discuss and explain with you the scenario which we are going today. And doctor from Bathinda are come here. In 2011, they all know there was very hue and crow in newspaper and electronic media that Punjab is the capital of cancer. So there is debate in parliament, there is debate in the assembly that the Punjab government is not initiate any measure to control the cancer in Punjab. Then one study was given to PGI and they have conducted the study on cancer in Punjab. But there are some flaws, so they could not, they have given more than 3 times cancer patient in Punjab. Now there is then again hue and crow in assembly and parliament that the Punjab government is not taking and central government is not, so central government should interfere in this program. So then the ICMR come into this scenario and they have given one project to Patiala Medical College in the pathology department to conduct this study. So the Patiala pathology department in that time, they have given one project, Cancer for Punjab Cancer Atlas. So it was a 3-year project. So Bathinda was the first district in Punjab where we have started this study. And in the midnight we went to there because the MCI team has come to this institute and we all went to Bathinda. And we see the train on which written cancer train. So we have took the photo of this train and we have also discussed with the passenger of this train. Most of the passenger in train was the cancer patient. They are going to Bikaner for treatment. Then we have started what are the drawbacks in this program. So we have conducted each and every pathologist first off in Bathinda. Dr. Dipali, Dr. Anita, they were first pathologists when we are going to their laboratory and we see all the record of their register, how many patients they have diagnosed. We have also visited the ultrasound, radiography, every step we have taken. So we have taken all the scenario of Punjab and we have took 3 years and we have only find 33,395 patients in Punjab in 2012. So this was the scenario. So which is happening in media and electronic media, this is not a proper research. Then this project was, now this report is available on the ICM website. So I advise the young budding pathologist, so never went on the money. So therefore, there is also now, because I am a member of 15 years in Punjab Medical Council, I have never received complaint against pathologist and lab. But nowadays, most of the complaint are against the pathologist and laboratories. So I advise you, so never give your digital signature, never give to commission to your physician or surgeon. So this is my advice to you, because this is all the scenario you are recorded by everybody. When you are talking with the physician or surgeon on the phone, it is recorded. So I advise you, so don't take this. So in these words, all the delegates welcome again, and I thanks all the pathology department faculty and PG student who have arranged this so wonderful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful words. Now I request Dr. Navneet Kaur, Dr. Monica Garg, HOD Blood Bank, Dr. Mohanveer Kaur. Ma'am, please kindly come on the stage to facilitate our dignitaries along with Dr. Harpal, sir. Ma'am, please do the honor. So first of all, I would request Dr. Harpal Singh along with Ma'am Mohanveer Kaur, Ma'am Navneet Kaur and Monica ma'am to felicitate our respected worthy Director Principal, sir, Dr. Raminder Pal Singh Sibia. Please give him a huge round of applause.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for the kind introduction. I want to thank the Department of Pathology here for inviting me on this occasion, on this day. So, just show of hands. I think quite a few people are still outside, but a show of hands of whoever is here, who all are practicing pathologists or trainee pathologists. Trainees, all right. And how many are looking at bone marrows day in and day out, every day? All right, not a few, not quite a few. Trainees would look at the bone marrows almost every day, right? All right. So since we are going to be talking about advanced topics in bone marrow further in the day, so I wanted to first start on what is the basic microscopic examination of bone marrow. What curtails to this examination? So now before we do a bone marrow, it's an invasive procedure, right? So we always want to avoid invasive procedures if we can. But if we do have to go that route, we have to have prerequisites and reasons enough to do that invasive procedure. So what are the prerequisites of requesting a bone marrow or performing a bone marrow? Now, depending upon how the hospital setup is there, sometimes the performing person is a clinician, and sometimes the bone marrow performing person is under the Department of Pathology. So either which way. So what are the prerequisites? You have to have a detailed medical history, which would include what are the clinical features of the patient, what is the family history, what are the physical examination of the patient. Then every bone marrow should have a full blood work done, full blood counts, obviously, the CBC with differentials, and any other additional lab tests which would be relevant for the diagnosis or the suspicion of that diagnosis. And of course, radiological or imaging studies if you are suspecting something focal or something related to that. What other points do we want to do prior to doing a bone marrow procedure? Now, this is an invasive procedure, so we always want to explain this to the patient in details, including any allergies or any medications that he or she will need to take and what are the complications he or she may expect. Then informed consent. We have to have informed consent, especially for the procedure, for the diagnostic part. But I want to highlight that if we are collecting a sample from the patient for research or for validation purposes of any other non-diagnostic reasons, we need to disclose this to the patient and get the consent from the patient. And of course, blood count, like I mentioned, blood count and smear needs to accompany that bone marrow. If it has been done within the last 2 days or 48 hours, we don't need to repeat that. But if it has not been done, then we need to repeat it at the time of the bone marrow. Now, this is a chart or a table that I have taken from the International Council of Standardization in Hematology. This is an older paper, 2008. Things have changed, but however, some of this still is relevant. What are the indications of bone marrow examination? Now, if we are investigating it for anything hematologic that we are suspecting, right? So, unexplained anemias or cytopenias, or we have cytosis, so there is an increase in some counts and we want to get to the bottom of it. Some abnormal indices that we get in the red blood cell indices, so we want to investigate that and need to get what is happening in the marrow, where the cells are coming out from. Of course, investigation of abnormal peripheral smear. If we see some abnormal findings in the peripheral smear, we would want to, which indicates that something is happening in the bone marrow. So definitely bone marrow would give us the answer to it, hopefully. Then diagnosis of and staging and follow-up of various malignancies, whether it be hematologic malignancies, including leukemias, lymphomas, your myelomas, MDS if you're suspecting, or myeloproliferative neoplasms if you're suspecting, plasma cell or amyloidosis or mastocytosis, some rare entities too. And also, of course, for non-hematologic malignancies too, to stage them, whether the bone marrow is involved or not. And unexplained focal bone lesions. Now, unexplained focal bone lesions could be, okay, you're suspecting a myeloma, so you go into that lesion to see what is happening there. It could also be, it may not even come to a hematopathologist, it may go to a surgical pathologist, right? Now, in this table at that time, they also labeled all these, they highlighted all these indications of performing bone marrows, which I think in current scenarios, we don't really have to do a bone marrow for this. For example, organomegaly and a mass biopsy elsewhere, a mass lesion elsewhere, and we want to do a bone marrow, well, I don't think that would give us an answer. We have to find an alternative method because it may not be involving the marrow, so well, we have just put the patient through a procedure for no reason. Microbiology cultures for investigating PUOs. Again, I think there are many other ways to do that rather than do a bone marrow these days. Then iron stores, usually we don't need to do a bone marrow study for analyzing the iron stores, especially in children, and I will show you why. Lipid storage disease, against lipid or glycogen storage diseases, again, bone marrow is not the first place that you would go to diagnose this. And exclusion of other hematologic, like that, probably we don't really do bone marrows to exclude a donor from any bone marrow pathology diagnosis or undiagnosed person. Now, so those are about our indications for bone marrow examination. So where do we do the bone marrow actually? So preferred sites are the iliac crests, whether it is the anterior iliac crest, posterior iliac crest, and in some cases we also tap the bilateral iliac crests. And in rare cases and in special circumstances, if you don't have access to these sites, then we can do a tibial or a sternal bone marrow. Again, those come with their respective complications. So when we are looking at bone marrow, what are the findings that we want to, incorporate in our bone marrow? We need to integrate the peripheral blood findings, the bone marrow, of course, aspirate, and the trephine biopsy. Now, there are certain circumstances where you will not get a trephine biopsy, which is okay because you have enough, for example, a follow-up of acute lymphoblastic leukemia in a pediatric patient, and you're just doing a day 29 bone marrow and you just want to assess the residual disease. So we really may not need a trephine biopsy. An aspirate would be enough. You have a flow cytometry, you have the morphology, and you have the answer whether there is any residual leukemia or not. And then we need to incorporate supplemental tests like immunophenotyping, your flow cytometry, which is any cytogenetic findings. Even if it is a normal cytogenetics, we need to always have that information for a bone marrow final diagnosis. And any molecular tests, if they were done or indicated, we would add that also, integrate that into our report. However, as we all know, the cytogenetics and molecular genetics studies may not come at the time of finalization of our bone marrow, our morphologic examination. Well, we can always do an addendum, right, like Dr. Yadav was also saying, that you can finalize your bone marrow aspirate and bone marrow core biopsy diagnosis and add in the comment that, okay, the cytogenetics and the molecular studies will be added later, and if there is a change in diagnosis, an addendum will be done or amendment will be done in the report. Flow cytometry usually does not hold the report back, because flow cytometry, you don't need a lot of preparation for that. So you can get the flow cytometry result almost the same day. If it was tapped in the morning, by the evening you should have the flow cytometry result. And of course your core biopsy sections will come out the next day. So you really don't have to hold back the report just because you are running flow cytometry or immunophenotyping. And we all know how the bone marrow is biopsy is done. So how many people actually do the bone marrow biopsy? Yes. Okay. Quite a few, and most of them, otherwise in other departments, other places, it's under the clinicians, right? We just get the sample. All right. So for people who have not done the bone marrow core biopsies, so where I trained, we were required, and it was under the Department of Pathology. So for the first 1 month of my fellowship in hematopathology, we had to go and do bone marrows day in and day out, and we were responsible for that. So when we are doing, as pathologists, when we are doing the procedures, we kind of have a little bit more control on the specimen. So you can do the procedure and assess it at the bedside of the patient, right? So when we are doing the bone marrow biopsy, or aspirate and biopsy, you know this is the cortex and this is where your wet marrow is, right? So once you have bored into the wet marrow, you first aspirate, and then when you push the needle further down, you get a core biopsy, right? So that is the simple thing. Now this is how we would see the bone marrow at the bedside of the patient. If it is a nice red core, we know we've gotten into the bone marrow, right? If it is not as red, there could be many things that are happening. There could be, we hit a lesion or a focal area where there is fibrosis, or there is metastatic tumor, or actually we did not hit the marrow at all. We went tangential. So all we got was a subcortical marrow. So when you're doing this assessment at the bedside of the patient, it is easier to get a much more adequate sample rather than having the clinician send it over and then we do all the processing and the next day we say, well, this was just cortical marrow. We can't do anything with this. So, so we would do this, assess it, and then also we can easily make touch preparations from this core biopsy right at the bedside. So that, and then throw this into formalin. And then aspirate smear, once it comes out, you know that when you pour it into the petri dish, what is a bone marrow aspirate? It is basically peripheral blood with little grains of sand in it, right? So when you pour into a petri dish, or how we made it at our institute, is that we poured into a petri dish and then we chose the particles out, right? And those particles then we use specifically to make our smears. And why we do that is because we want to increase the yield of the marrow specimen that we've got. If we just took it out of the tube and made a smear of it, we may or may not get the particle, and we may or may not get a representative of the marrow. All we did was hemodilute specimen, right? So what are the components of this bone marrow examination? So we have the aspirate smear, which we can make on the bedside of the patient, like I mentioned, or we can collect it in an anticoagulant, or it is collected in an anticoagulant and sent over to the pathology department. Now the anticoagulants, depending upon what you are using it for, you can collect it for morphology, you can collect it in EDTA, you can collect it in sodium citrate too. Heparin is not used for sodium citrate, but is used for those ancillary studies. Now here I have put a caveat in EDTA, is because if the sample is to the anticoagulant ratio is off, we may have too much anticoagulant for the number of cells that we have, and we may distort the morphology when we look at the aspirate smear. So we all have to be aware of what these EDTA related changes are prevalent, or you can see, so that we don't overdiagnose something as an MDS or something like that. So I just want to make that clear. And especially I want to make this clear is because in pediatric patients, when we have bone marrow, many times we may not get enough aspirate for the tube that has the anticoagulant, the amount of anticoagulant. So in that case, our EDTA artifacts will be quite prominent. So in my pediatric practice, or in where I was practicing, we actually switched to sodium citrate, which did not have those EDTA related changes in the morphology, which would always confuse us whether it is truly MDS or is this just EDTA related changes. And of course, some places will have clots, and if you have a clot, it is collected in formalin. And then the core biopsy, like I mentioned, we can do touch preparations. Is transported in formalin, and then it is processed, decalcified and processed on the processor for the sections coming out the next day. The clot does not need decalcification, as we all know. Now, what do we look? What are the components that we look at in these? In the aspirates, we look at whether they have adequate particles, we have adequate cellularity, and adequate staining. Now, why the staining? Because if the staining is not adequate, we will not be able to assess the morphology of the cells well, and not be able to render the accurate diagnosis or accurate interpretation of the marrow. Clot, we look at particles. Now, why? So, and then I'll touch it again. Core biopsy, we look at size, if it is adequate or not in size. Usually, the books and academically, we say yes, it should be more than 2 centimeters, equal to or more than 2 centimeters. But in pediatrics, we may not be able to get more than 2 centimeters. So sometimes even a smaller 1 centimeter biopsy would also give us the enough findings to make a accurate diagnosis. And then when we talk about intertrabecular areas, we say generally we say there should be about 10 intertrabecular areas for us to have as much information from that core biopsy as possible. And now, why do we do clots and biopsy? So aspirate gives us the entire cell, so we can look at the whole cell and talk about its morphology. In the core biopsy, we are making sections, so we may have some sectioning artifacts. So and I'll show you an example. For example, megakaryocytes are located right next to the sinusoids. We don't ever always see megakaryocytes sitting next to the sinusoids. It's because we are sectioning through. So you have that sectioning artifact that you may not see enough of the cell because you either sectioned it off or it is still lying in the block. For example, megakaryocytes, because they are the largest cells in the marrow, if we sectioned it in such a way that we got just one part of the nucleus, we may misinterpret it as, oh, it is a hypolobated megakaryocyte. So you have that little disadvantage of looking at sections. However, the advantage is that you can see the cells in their natural architecture, in their natural environment, whether they are sitting in the place that they need to be sitting, are they maturing in the way that they need to be maturing. Now, once we have the core biopsy and the aspirate, why do we need the clot? So sometimes, I think this is a fail-safe mechanism that we have put into our procedures.
Books and everything from sir only, Dr. Tejinder Singh. So sir is a senior consultant at ONFIS Lab in Delhi and also past president of IIM, past president of Indian Society of Hematology, fellow of Indian College of Pathology, fellow of Indian author of 7 books on hematology, formerly HOD and professor of pathology, MAPS Delhi, former dean of Faculty of Medical Sciences, Delhi University, and past dean of Indian College of Hematology. Sir, please give us some knowledge about acute leukemia. So first, the session is on the
Good afternoon, everybody.
Sir.
It is my pleasure to be here. About a decade ago, a conference was organized by Dr. Bal here. And I had come from MAMC with a team of 15 residents and faculty members. And all of us had a fantastic time in Patiala. And others from different parts of the country. We have PGs from all over the country. So they had a taste of Punjabi food. They also had the Punjabi delicacies and we enjoyed, and we still remember every conference wherever we go, we always compare with Patiala. That is what it is remembered for. See, today I am going to take 2 talks. One is on acute leukemia workup. See, whenever we get a case which is suspicious of acute leukemia or a case of acute leukemia, how do we work up actually? What we read in the books is slightly different, but what we actually do is slightly different. Is it working or no? इसका देखना है। ये तो कौन कर रहा है? वही कर रहा था तो कोई बात नहीं। ये स्लाइड मूव चल रहा है। ये इसमें चल रहा है। ओके फाइन। अरे वाह ग्रेट, थैंक यू। All right. I would like to see the slides. See the fifth edition of the WHO has come, and I think all of it is 6. Oh. क्यों? हाँ?
नहीं मैंने बढ़ा दी है सर, बोलना एक बार बोलिए आप।
हेलो, ओके फाइन। हाँ?
यहाँ थोड़ा सा नजदीक हो जाए सर, थोड़ा सा नजदीक।
चलिए फाइन। Is it okay now? Okay. Now here it is by differentiation. That means the blast cells are either undifferentiated. If they are undifferentiated, then we can't say myeloid. Then it is as good as lymphoid also. Acute lymphoid leukemia or acute myeloid leukemia without differentiation, if that is so. But no, now we have the means to classify them, which may be based on morphology, cytochemistry, immunohistochemistry, or it may be by flow cytometry. And now we have molecular also, because some of the leukemias we diagnose not only on the basis of the more than 20% blast, but even less than 20%. That also we will see which is the group where we can classify them. So what do you find? Acute myeloid leukemia with minimal differentiation, without maturation. What is the meaning of without maturation is that the blast cells are not maturing into myelometa or so. They remain the blast. If they remain only blast, then the only positive thing is that we have to demonstrate it is MPO positive. How? How do we demonstrate that it is myeloperoxidase positive? Either by cytochemistry or by flow cytometry, what we call as immunophenotyping, or by doing immunohistochemistry. Then we have acute leukemia, means 12% blast, 10% blast. Those will form the basis for classification as acute leukemia. That will come to it later. So what does leukemia subtyping needs? Clinical background, morphology, cytochemistry, immunophenotyping by using monoclonal antibodies or by flow cytometry, then cytogenetics, and then we have molecular genetics. Okay, so these are the methods what we follow. But now our role does not finish. Now your role has started once you are involved in the management of the cases of acute leukemia. So what do you find? Last two things, MRD. So you have to tell the clinician, is there any minimal residual disease left after giving the therapy or not? Now that by and large we are doing by flow cytometry. But the day is not far off that when NGS will be used even for minimal residual disease. We will not be looking for the leukemic cells, we will be looking at the DNA of the leukemic cells, as that is the DNA still present or not. So that day is not far off. So now we have MRD and then we do the NGS. Okay. Now what samples are evaluated? If there are blast cells in the peripheral blood, good enough. At least you can tell the clinician, is it AML or ALL, or it is acute leukemia or MDS. Sometimes you find the blast cells are few. Now when does it happen? I'll show you some slides and some cases, okay? So then the core biopsy and marrow clot sections, as Dr. Khakkar was telling you, the role of the clot sections. Even in such cases also, you will come across that there are blast cells which are lying in the clot section, but on aspirate we found it to be a diluted marrow. All right. Now, see, basically, as I told you, that what we need are the blast cells. And do we have lymphoblast, as you can see on the left? On the right is a myeloblast in which there is an OR rod. Now, the OR rod, presence of OR rod indicates it is malignant. So that means what we are looking at, the cell is malignant. This is a blast cell. Now, is this